In my time since I started watching the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I haven't felt this betrayed by the reaction to one of its films until now with Captain America: Brave New World. I saw the movie this past weekend, and since then, I have been thinking about it a lot every single day, and upon my thoughts while working on this video, it has really only been more justified with each new thought I've had on it that so many people out there who have criticized it are out of their minds. Obviously, differences of opinion are normal, and if you didn't like this movie all that much, all the power to you. But I just can't for the life of me understand how some people think to themselves that this movie, of all MCU films to date, is one of the worst ones yet. I mean, seriously, some people have treated this movie as if it committed murder and got away with it. It is really not that bad of a film, or even that mediocre of a film. So today, I'm going to analyze why so many people got it wrong with some of the things that they've said about Brave New World, just based on my personal opinion of it. To everyone watching, where does Brave New World rank amongst all four of the Captain America movies? Let me know in the comments as we run through this video. Let's start off by breaking down the notion of expectation versus reality. It's a relatable idea that most people experience with this kind of gap between what they hope for and what actually happens. Spoilers ahead for anyone who hasn't seen the film yet, by the way. For me, I was hoping that Brave New World would be good enough to justify an entertaining experience, even though I knew from a lot of the stuff that came out about the movie with regards to it having a troubled production that I'd set my expectations to the idea that maybe the movie wasn't going to be all there, but I would still want a good time at the theaters when I saw it. The first question I always ask myself when I come out of a movie like this, whether it is the MCU or another area of the comic book genre, is was I entertained by it? I can happily and thankfully say that I was entertained by it. For the most part, when it comes to every single thing I've watched from the MCU, there has always been some level of entertainment from it that has kept me watching over the years to the point where I have now watched almost every single thing that the MCU has put out. There is also this contrast which is common from the promotion of how something built up a certain image or an idea in my mind, but the actual product itself may or may not have fallen short, leaving me feeling like I was let down or frustrated by it. Anytime I have watched marketing and promotions for Captain America: Brave New World, I have always had the feeling that it seemed like the movie was going to have some entertainment to it, which is something I always look for when I go into watching a film, even though some of my expectations were that I was going to experience some stuff that was not as good. I was still going to want to hope for a good time, stuffing my face with popcorn and just taking it in with whatever story this film had to tell. I think this is ultimately one of the biggest reasons why my expectation versus reality is so warped based on how certain people have treated the film, because I did really like it. Is it a top 15 or even maybe a top 20 MCU film out of the 35 that have been made so far? No, I would say not quite at all that it's going to be all the way up there, but is it one of the worst, like top 5 worst? Absolutely not. Not even fucking close. Because again, there is that entertainment factor for me to why I was able to enjoy myself with this and not be so pressured into thinking that because the movie had so many issues with its production, that is the biggest reason for why it hampered down its quality. I'm definitely not going to argue that some of the production troubles it had definitely hurt it a little bit, but in the end, the final product I got was not as bad as many people made it out to be. The only times that I truly saw the film's reshoot and production issues come into effect were from a storytelling perspective and also certain aspects of the plot. I will not deny that I saw right through the story with certain things they were doing, with how certain characters kind of just got put in there because they needed to fix around how plot lines were being handled in the original version of the movie that happened before any of the reshoots took place. It felt like there were multiple different movies compacted into one with Brave New World, and I could tell that most of that stuff came from the villain side of the film, with characters like Sidewinder, played by Giancarlo Esposito, and then also the main villain, Samuel Stearns, aka the leader, who returned from his previous role within The Incredible Hulk. From Act 1 to Act 2 to Act 3, I could see that there were certain beats with specific characters and then also specific events within the plot that didn't line up as perfectly as they should have because of those two villains. It definitely seemed like they didn't have a concrete grip on what the script was going to be about for this movie, and so what we ended up getting in the end was one of the most generic MCU films that we've had to date. Straight up, I'll say it for what it is. This is a very generic MCU film that doesn't quite have enough to it to where I would say it's one of the best stories the MCU has told so far. It really does come off like it's a season of television, kind of like storyline that could have been told that way if it was, say, the second season of The Falcon and Winter Soldier, only you'd probably leave the Winter Soldier part out. And also, you could also say that it feels like it's a straight up sequel to The Incredible Hulk and not so much a Captain America movie, but we'll talk about that with other details in a minute. The movie All at Once is completely its own thing, but also not really its own thing because it had to tie into stuff from past films like Incredible Hulk while also setting up the future for what's to come with other films, and structurally, I noticed it a lot. I'll even agree with some people when they say that the post-credits scene was kind of unnecessary and a little bit confusing because I don't quite understand how the leader as a character has the power to know what's to come down the line, but I guess the comics people will tell me about that in the comments. Even with that aside, I think the MCU in general has had a bit of a post-credit scene problem for a while now because I don't really think that there's been a great one yet that warrants waiting through the credits to see, but I digress. The movie absolutely has a villain problem as well, to bring that back around to talk about with those characters. In a matter of speaking, depending on who you are, I think some people will agree that the film has 3 different antagonists, even if 2 of them are straight up villains versus the other one who is more so a good guy, but a very troubled one. The MCU, since its inception, has had a major villain issue to the point where there are only a couple of villains that you could truly say are some of the best the universe has had to offer us. Villains like Thanos, Killmonger, and Loki, just to name a few. Captain America Brave New World doesn't quite add to that list, unfortunately, and I do personally believe that if, say, the main villains of this movie don't ever get established again in another film, then they are probably going to go down as some of the weakest MCU villains that we've had to date. I don't think people are going to remember the leader as a good villain, if at all, and I don't think that people will remember Sidewinder played by Giancarlo, who I think could definitely have been given a lot more because I think he played it very well for the amount of screen time that he had. Giancarlo is just a really damn good actor, and I didn't like that he was given the short end of the stick for this one. The other antagonist is Thunderbolt Ross himself, along with his Red Hulk persona, and I will talk about him in a minute, but overall, I don't think most people will disagree that this film does have a villain issue, and it's one of its weakest features along with the story. But with all that being said, with regards to the stuff that I did have an issue with in the film, let's now talk about the rest of the movie, because everything else I haven't talked about yet is what I liked and really liked, starting with Anthony Mackie himself as the film's titular character Sam Wilson, aka the new Captain America. I think a lot of what could have been this film's greater success rested on the shoulders of him as this character, and yet I personally believe that he carried it in a way that only Anthony Mackie could. Anthony Mackie as an actor is one of the more charming actors the film industry has today, and I think you need that kind of actor to play and fill this role of one of Marvel's most important characters. He, as the new Captain America, is absolutely earned. He just plays it so well and has a charm to him like Chris Evans did, which is also why I think both worked so well together when they were on screen in the Infinity Saga film. They are probably one of people's favorite duos that the MCU has had to offer when they were a thing in the past films. Sam Wilson and Steve Rogers both exemplify the core values of that shield that they carry despite their different backgrounds and experiences. It doesn't matter if it's their shared sense of duty and responsibility, challenging the status quo, or even something as basic as having empathy and being understanding. The very first time we ever met Sam Wilson in the MCU, you could automatically see that within him when he's having that meeting with military veterans as a counselor for them, given he himself was also a veteran. I think that Anthony Mackie is able to portray so much of what is represented in Steve Rogers that makes him his own character, even when still representing what it means to hold the mantle of something as important as the name Captain America. I definitely do not agree with the people who say that Anthony Mackie does not do well with this role, because I really think that he earns it both in character and within himself as an actor playing it. He is one of the shining bright lights of this movie for why I was as locked in as I was, because I do respect him as an actor playing the character, and overall, I just like how he carries himself in every scene that he's in. I said that I would talk about him, and one of the other shining bright lights of this movie was Harrison Ford taking over for the character of Thunderbolt Ross. Lots of people had their hesitations to whether or not Harrison Ford would be able to take over well enough for William Hurt after he passed away and could not reprise his role as the character that he had been playing for a very long time, almost 10 plus years. Harrison Ford, I think, as an actor lately, with the things that he's been in, is someone who has, I'd say, phoned it in with some of his performances, but here in Brave New World, I would be lying to myself if I didn't say with my full chest that he might be the best thing about this movie. He doesn't phone in the performance, and he actually seems like he's giving a shit about what's going on. Obviously, he as an actor doesn't give a shit about the story or the overall MCU, but from an acting standpoint, I felt all of what he said in the movie. His character has connections with the leader, obviously because of the fact that there is that connection to the Incredible Hulk when they first met in that film, and so there are some plot holes and conveniences around that aspect of the plot that I think some people could easily break down and say that that doesn't make sense. But everything else around his character in the film is very compelling, especially once we get to that grand finale of him turning into the Red Hulk and showing the world who he truly is for about 10 or so minutes, give or take. After the rest of the film's plot comes to a close as we approach that finale, the leader invokes his grand master plan to get back at Ross for what he did to him after the Incredible Hulk, and this was all about making sure that he turned. They establish in the movie that Ross had had heart problems and is the reason for why he has gamma in his blood from the leader who has been helping him with that, which is what allows for him to turn into the Red Hulk. And let me tell you, even though I hate the fact that the fight sequence and him being the Red Hulk was only for about 10 minutes of the movie, I still was thoroughly satisfied by what we ended up getting in that action sequence. Hot take, but in my opinion, I think not only is the Red Hulk fight sequence one of the best action sequences the MCU has had so far, I also believe that the Red Hulk himself might just be a top 3 or top 5 best CGI effect that Marvel has ever done. Watching that sequence unfold on the IMAX screen that I saw the film in, I could see such great detail that the visual effects artist put within this sequence, but also the Red Hulk character. Not only does it look amazing when taking in the Harrison Ford look, but the body and everything else about his look in general is just masterful work. Weta is the visual effects company that worked on this film, and so it's not surprising in any way that the best visual effects company in the world is the one that made this character look as good as it did. Aside from the fact that I really like all that stuff about the character and that sequence, I will also admit here that I do think one of this movie's biggest issues is that it did market the Red Hulk character to audiences before the film came out. I will definitely agree with some people when they say that it would have made the film 10,000 times better had they kept that a secret, because for as much as they marketed him, you would have thought it was in the film for a lot longer than he actually was. At the same time, I don't know how many MCU fans out there probably would have ever expected that the Red Hulk character would have been adapted to the big screen. For as many movies as this character has been in so far, I'm sure that some people would have expected that he would have happened already, but we never got to that point. I definitely think that there is an aspect of this movie that could easily have been marketed much better around the political spy thriller aspect of it, to where you could keep the Red Hulk stuff secret and just allow for that to be an awesome experience in the movie theaters for people to see for the first time. They really could have honed in on the Winter Soldier aspect of what this movie is going for, and I think that could have played much better to it in my personal opinion. There are a couple other side characters in the film as well that I thought were just okay with what they were given, from Ross's head of Secret Service, Liv Tyler returning as Betty Ross to make a cameo appearance in order to tie up a plot line from the Incredible Hulk between her and Ross, which I could definitely tell was a reshoot edition. Takehiro Hira as the Japanese Prime Minister. This actor was recently in Shogun as the head lord who was against Hiroyuki Sanada's character. And then the character of Sabra as Ross's head of security was also just fine. It felt like that they wanted to develop that character a little bit more, but never fully went there, and apparently her storyline was a part of some of the reshoot changes. But then you have the two biggest side character roles, with Carl Lumbly as Isaiah Bradley Lumbly and Danny Ramirez as Joaquin Torres, both returning from their debuts in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Carl Lumbly might have given the underrated performance of the movie because he was damn good here. He and Sam had great conversations with each other that felt real and authentic about Sam's role as Captain America to the President, especially a president like Ross. I could tell that there was an aspect of his character and storyline that was missing, and yeah, I kind of wish that they had a little bit more for him to do with it. He's a very good addition to the MCU in my personal opinion. Now, Danny Ramirez as Joaquin Torres, on the other hand, is where we get to talking about my view on the reactions to this movie and why I think many of them are wrong and ridiculous. Danny Ramirez as the new Falcon was just okay. He certainly isn't an annoying character like a lot of people have said he is. Is he funny? Absolutely not. Not one of his jokes landed, but he's not annoying. I've seen some people talk about his character, and they really thought that he played it like a cartoon, acting like instead of walking through doors, he would instead cartwheel through them instead. He wasn't doing anything that cartoonish or weird in the film to warrant some people calling his character obnoxious and annoying. This gets to my point about why I believe a lot of people who have criticized this movie, especially the critics themselves, have gotten it wrong. I even saw people hating on the cameo scene of Bucky Barnes coming in to comfort Sam after Joaquin went down injured during the battle in the Indian Ocean. It's a good scene between the two characters who go way back and have come to respect each other as friends, and yet for some reason, people thought that that scene was not earned. I would really love to know how some people think that that scene is not earned. I mean, come on, that's just ridiculous. I recognize that the film had its issues for sure, as I've talked about in this video enough already, but it just seems like critics have a thing against the MCU now because it's the thing to do. That's not to say that I am defending Marvel in any way from some of the stuff they've been doing in recent years, because I'm not. I am one of the people who thinks that Marvel needs to refocus themselves up right now and get back on track with having a more linear focus to their overall storytelling narrative. At the same time, I also recognize that people looking into these movies and shows have had such a fundamental lack of care for even trying to give the bare minimum to the criticisms of certain things the MCU is doing. I am not here saying that certain criticisms shouldn't be sent at these movies. All I'm saying is that people actually take it seriously instead of making blatant and sad attempts at certain criticisms. When I see critics say that the action in the movie was slow and not that appealing, I question what movie they watched as opposed to what I saw. The only action scene that was actually bad and maybe the worst scene in the film is the one where Joaquin is tracking down the bikers who have that can of adamantium. Objectively, it's not even close. That is a really poorly made scene that I would not defend, but the rest of the movie is very entertaining from an action perspective, and yet people are even dogging on that. It's like critics and some of the other audience members who are piling on this movie have completely forgotten what it means to actually enjoy a film. I can understand where some people are coming from when they say that the MCU has been unfocused lately, and they want to see movies be more of their own thing, or they would want to see it be more of a representation of the MCU taking their overall connection seriously. For me, it basically comes down to the idea that I don't think enough people understand what they want anymore out of this franchise. I, like many other people, think that a soft reboot of the franchise is needed, and I personally think we are going to get that after Avengers Secret Wars. But yet, will that even matter? The big thing to do right now is hate the MCU. It is clear as day online. Don't even get me started with the amount of content creators and people on social media who are also a part of the problem, where they can't even try to show that they care about criticizing a film that they may or may not have watched. We as a society have just completely forgotten what it means to go into a movie to be entertained first versus the idea that we have to focus on the criticisms and critiquing it first before anything else. If you go into movies always looking to see what you can get out of criticizing it before anything else, then you're just never going to enjoy movies for the rest of your life. Even just the stupidness of certain people out there to now want to actually hate the movie because Anthony Mackie said a certain thing about what the character of Captain America means to him and it didn't line up with what you believe in is ridiculous. Those comments he made not that long ago are honestly some of the truest statements someone could make about the character of Captain America, but yet when Anthony Mackie says it, it's wrong, versus when Chris Evans said it all those years ago when he first started playing the character, and nobody said shit about that. And to that point, everyone and their mother has completely lost any idea of what characters actually represent because it conflates with their beliefs, and so that also conflates with them wanting to actually go into liking a movie if they tried. Captain America Brave New World is a passable, decent, and entertaining film that has multiple issues as I discussed, but I don't for 1 second think that it is the film that everyone online is making it out to be. We also can't forget that this movie was the last one that was made under the leadership of Bob Chapek, who had no idea what he was doing with Marvel and tried to turn it into a quantity over quality machine. The movie was also being made during the end of the COVID Disney Plus era, along with going through the strikes of Hollywood that happened in the last year or so. All around, it just had some issues on the production side, and yet the film itself still turned out decent at best. The MCU is 35 films in now, and at some point, you are just going to get some stuff that is not as good as the great stuff that we've gotten already. The cinema score for it was a B-, making it the lowest of any MCU movie yet. Really? This is the movie that you think deserves to have the lowest cinema score in the MCU? Get the fuck out of here with that shit. I could name a bunch of movies in the MCU that rank much lower than it. I don't usually give scores to movies or shows when analyzing them on this channel, but if I had to give Brave New World a score, it would be like a 3.25 or a 3.5 out of 5 at the least, but nothing lower than that. This is why I believe that many people have got it all wrong when it comes to this, and it's one of the biggest reasons why I'm making this video. Obviously, it all comes down to a matter of difference in opinions. I liked it, and I know that some other people don't, and yet I'm sitting here making this commentary about why I don't understand the people who didn't like it, and so that's just how I feel about this film. But there you have it. That's my commentary and analysis on Captain America: Brave New World. I'm sure that there is potential for me to be walking into a landmine field with this video, but I am ready to talk with both sides of people who liked it and also didn't. What do you all think about the movie and my commentary on it? Leave your comments down below and let's have a nice and respectful conversation about it. I can't ask enough that whether we disagree or agree, please be respectful, as I do read all the comments in my video to the best of my ability. Thank you for stopping by my channel. If you want to see more moving forward from me with regards to film and television, and you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe if you are new here, and turn on that notification bell. I'm trying to build a community on here, and your support would be greatly appreciated. That's a wrap, folks. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you all soon for the next video.